This is a story called, My Dreams Are Not My Own. Contrary to popular belief, lucid dreaming is a highly common phenomenon. Lucid dreaming, for clarification, is a different kind of dreaming. The sleeper is aware that they are dreaming. They have full control over their movements, their dream. They are no longer a helpless onlooker, watching the dream, simply following the narrative. They know they are in the dream. They have control. People usually believe it takes a certain kind of person, under the exact circumstances in order to trigger one. Scientists and fanatics on the subject clash often on this. Some say it's bad to have lucid dreams. It distorts perception of reality. Others say it increases creativity. Some say it causes delusions, hallucinations, delirium, disorientation. But lucid dreaming, for me, well, it changed my life. For the better or for the worse, that's up to you to decide. But before I start to ramble too far, I suppose I should start at the beginning. He says starting at the beginning is always best. My mother always said I had an active imagination. I was a creative kid. When I was younger, I used to have amazingly creative dreams. I would tell my parents all about them, the adventures I had been on, the things I had seen. But I also had terrifying nightmares. When I was young, 4th grade or so, my nightmares began to delve further. I no longer had nightmares about falling off of things, or coming to school without pants, writing the wrong answer on the board at school. No, they got much worse than that. In fact, it was actually the same thing, over and over again. Night after night, plaguing my sleep, my dreams, plaguing my mind. They started the same. It was me. I was sitting in a grassy field, somewhere I didn't recognize. It was warm and sunny. It felt like summer. The grass would tickle me on the exposed skin that wasn't being covered by my shorts, the warmth spreading over me like a second skin. I was sitting in the field. That's how it would start. I would sit there for a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity. But it was peaceful, silent. The only noises were those of critters and insects, the occasional wave of a light breeze making the grass around me flutter. Eventually, however, the silence was always broken. Broken by footsteps. They would come from behind, small and light, a child's footsteps. In the dream, I never turned around. I waited until the footsteps came around to the front of me. Of course, however, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't turn around sooner even if I tried. I was not lucid dreaming, no. I was an onlooker, a visitor in my own mind. I waited until the footsteps got closer, until I could see the person in front of me. And every time, it was the same person. It was a boy who was around my age, a little taller than I was. He had dark hair. His hair was so dark that I honestly couldn't tell if it was black or an incredibly deep brown. He had hooded blue eyes and soft, defined features, but that always looked so sharp because of the expression he wore. He wore the same expression in every dream. He looked sad, confused, generally upset. It broke my heart, just a little every time this dream happened. Because I wanted to go to him. I wanted to make myself get up, stand up, and wrap my arms around him, anything to vanish the aching sadness that was on his face, that played across his features. But I never got to. Because in the dream, I always stayed sitting. I watched the boy as he walked over, and sat down in front of me. He was wearing a white shirt and black shorts. The same outfit. Every time, he would sit a few feet in front of me. He would sit in the field, and draw his little legs up to his chest, wrap his arms around him. Making himself into a ball. Protecting himself perhaps, from himself. As if he wrapped his arms tightly enough around himself, that maybe he could keep all of his emotions inside, preventing them from leaving him. But later in the dream, I would learn that it wasn't the emotions that he was trying to keep inside. But before I could say anything, do anything, the boy would finally look up at me. His piercing blue eyes pressed hard into mine, cutting and sharp. But still, the sadness remained, etched onto every line of his young face. And he would always say one thing. Just one line. But his voice was cold. It was soft. It was chilling. Why didn't you save me, Theo? The most disturbing thing wasn't even that my name wasn't Theo. No, It was what came after. Every time he spoke this sentence, the sun seemed to vanish. The warm air seemed to dissipate. The air became cold. I was filled with a sudden, jerking feeling of dread. Clouds rolled in the sky, making it gray. Colorless. The color from my surroundings seemed to vanish too. Everything turned into shades of black and gray. But not from the boy. No, the color stayed in him. But he was repeating this sentence now. Why didn't you save me, Theo? Why didn't you save me, Theo? Over and over again, as his body began to tremble. The boy started to cry. Sobs racked his body. His small arms shook from around his legs as tears slipped down his face. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a sound. A high-pitched, chilling giggle. Like a child's. But not. Very much not. It was too high, too cold to even belong to a human. The boy's body started to shake harder. His tears falling faster, slipping down his face. His head would start shaking back and forth, faster. And faster. Faster and faster until he started to clutch his chest, as something rippled under his shirt. As if something was underneath, trying to get out. Because there was. Because a moment later, something would start to emerge from his chest. I always tried to forget this part. It was a limb. It looked like an arm, but it was too thin, too long. On the hand, it had fingers as long as rulers, pressed against the boy's chest as the rest of it pushed itself through. All of it was black. Pitch black. Like it was made of shadows. At this point, I would run. I would get up, and start running, my legs miraculously working. I could hear the voice shouting behind me. Why didn't you save me, Theo? The sky was dark, and the high-pitched giggles started to erupt from all around me. I didn't know where I was trying to run. I was just trying to get away, but the field seemed endless. Colorless. Pointless. What came next always happened. I would trip over something non-existent. The cold giggles from behind me would near, and I would turn around to see what it was, scrambling backwards. It was then that I could see it. The figure. It was long, and tall. Unnaturally long limbs. Its face was smeared, like it was painted on and messily wiped off. Its face resembled nothing more than a black oval, except for one thing. The smile. The white, stretching, maniacal smile that spread from corner to corner. It always came closer, slowly. Like it knew I had no chance of getting away. Its mouth would start to stretch. Wide. Unnaturally wide. Large enough to fit, well, to fit a person. I tried to scream, tried to yell, but all that escaped me was whispers as the creature, the thing neared closer, and closer, its mouth wide, its mouth open. I would watch helplessly as its fingers grasped my shirt, pulling me closer, closer to its mouth. That's when I would wake up. I would wake up suddenly, gasping for air, drenched in sweat, trembling. Shaking, often crying, confused and scared. Especially when the dream came back with each night. My parents rushed me around to doctors, therapists. People suggested all sorts of things. Too much sugar before bed, excessive stress. No one had an answer. For at least a year, at the very minimum. Until one day, they simply stopped. They ceased to happen. Confused, but relieved, my entire family tried to brush the whole thing on as an overactive imagination. Too much sugar, probably. The wild side of a young child's mind. The dreams stopped, but one thought from them didn't. Who was Theo? And who was the boy? I set my bag heavily down on the floor of my apartment, breathing a sigh of relief as I did, running my free hand over my face. I was exhausted, halfway through my last year of college, and I already felt so worn out. I wanted to be done with the tests, the homework, the textbooks, all of it. And right now, I just wanted to sleep. I had been at the library, studying with some friends, although not much studying actually got done, which I suppose was the whole problem with studying with friends. But I loved my friends to pieces. There were the twins, Isabella and Chase, who I met at the beginning of my first year. They showed me where to get the best pizza and coffee around campus. Clearly, the necessities. We shared a love for bad horror movies and rewatching all the Harry Potter ones every chance we got. There was also Tyler, a bit of a loudmouth who fancied himself an amateur comedian, even if his jokes were more mean-spirited than funny. Regardless, he was fun to be around, and pushed me out of my comfort zone, even if I was unwilling. Altogether, we were the best kind of disaster. I ran another hand over my face, through my hair, before looking at the clock. 3:34 a.m. Shit, really, I hadn't even noticed the time, just the overwhelming waves of exhaustion that settled over me as we all unanimously agreed to pack things up for the night. Well, day now, I suppose. I briefly debated for a moment whether or not it was a better idea to just ride it out and pull an all-nighter, or get the few hours of sleep that I could. Neither was the better option, I was simply picking my poison. Eventually, the few hours of sleep poison sounded better, and I could only pray that I wouldn't sleep through my alarm. I shuffled to my room, pushing the door open and flicking on the lights. I changed into a soft, worn-out t-shirt and shorts before shuffling to the bathroom, turning on the water to try and splash some water on my face before going to bed. I glanced at my reflection for a moment, wincing. My dirty blonde hair was messy and disheveled from almost falling asleep on a book, and my dark chocolate eyes looked tired and sleepy. I was still going to hold out hope that a few hours of sleep could help. Or maybe some strong coffee in the morning. I made my way back to my bed, and flopped down, turning off my lights, not even bothering to plug in my phone, lock the doors, anything. I just needed to sleep. And I fell asleep almost instantly. Heat is an interesting concept, since heat and warmth are often regarded as the same thing, but really, they're quite different. Warmth is gentle, it's slow, it's spreading. It's peaceful, pleasant. Heat is urgent, it's pressing, it's burning. It layers over you like a second skin until either you get out of it, or embrace it. Right now, I was hot. Not warm, hot. I rolled over, wanting to find the cold side of the pillow, my arm sliding under to unconsciously reach for it, but my hand never found it. It brushed against something soft, something thin. My arm continued to move around, trying to search for the soft fabric of my pillow, but it couldn't find it. My brain, frustrated, now started to wake me up. My body was still hot, overly hot, like I had been laying in the sun. Maybe I should start sleeping with a lighter blanket. My other hand reached up to take it off of me, but came up empty. Nothing was on me. Confused, and now slightly disoriented, I tried to sit up, my eyes fluttering open. They had to squint, because of the light. Sunlight. My eyes flew open, my body scrambling to sit up, my arms brushing against my surroundings. Tall, soft grass. How was this possible? I was asleep. I fell asleep in my bed, right. I splashed the water on my face, I set my bag down. I got changed, I went to sleep. Right. My eyes quickly started to scan my surroundings. It was a field. A big, grassy field with no end in sight. And it was hot, the sun beating down from the cloudless sky. How did I end up here? Abduction. A prank. Sleepwalking. I didn't recognize anything, but it all seemed vaguely familiar. My heart was racing as my brain was trying to sort through the hundreds of thoughts racing across my mind, all demanding to be dealt with first. I was still trying to sort these thoughts, try to focus on one when I heard the footsteps behind me. The footsteps. Oh, shit, I instantly knew what felt vaguely familiar. The heat, the field, the footsteps. It was the dream. God, how long had it been since I had it? More than 10 years at least. Since I last had it as a kid. But even though my brain knew what was going to happen, it was different. Because I could move, I wasn't an onlooker, I was in my own body. I could think for myself, I could feel myself. I was myself, I was lucid dreaming, but that didn't even matter because just why? Why now? God knows how many years later. What did I do to deserve this? My breath was bated as the small footsteps approached from behind. But even now, they were different. Because it wasn't just one pair of footsteps. It was two. I could move, I could do anything I'm sure if I felt like it, but my body was frozen. Waiting. Eventually, the steps reached in front of me, as expected. It was the boy, still sad, hurt, upset. But there was someone else with him now. Someone older. Someone my age, early 20s, although a few inches taller, maybe. He followed close behind, hands in his pockets. He was wearing the same thing as the young boy. White shirt, black shorts. The closer I looked, the more I realized that he just looked like an older version of the young boy. He had the same dark, messy hair. The same dark blue eyes, the same expression, although it looked more serious. Defined features, broad shoulders, really just the young boy, just grown up. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, pretending that I didn't notice any of his features, that I didn't notice that it was rather, well, I would be lying if I said that he wasn't attractive. But anyways, what was happening? The smaller boy crossed in front of me, just as he always did. He sat down, legs crossed, arms around them. But the older boy came around, and stood behind him, his hands still in his pockets. I swallowed again, trying to get my brain to try and formulate sentences. Words. Anything. Like why the hell I was here. Why I couldn't just sleep in peace. The younger boy looked up at me, his gaze cold. I looked up, and saw the older boy's gaze on me as well, although it was softer. Contemplating. Almost. Calculating. The younger boy opened his mouth to speak. Speak the words that had haunted me for years. Why didn't you save us? He started, but he was cut off. The older boy spoke over him. That's not why we're here, he said, looking at the younger boy. The younger boy turned to look at him, glaring. So, there was a reason I was here then. Why? I asked suddenly, a burst of confidence flowing through me. Why am I here? I asked, trying to keep the shake out of my voice. Maybe if I talked, I could wake up before the monster could come out of the younger boy. The younger boy turned, shifting his cold gaze onto me as the older boy placed his hand on his shoulder, a silent reminder to not speak. We need you, Theo. The older boy said. His voice was strong, but soft. Methodical, soothing, almost. It landed gently on my ears, more so than the younger boy. My name it's not Theo. I said, my voice almost a whisper. I started, but the boy cut me off. It's not important what name they gave you this time. You're Theodore. Theo. The older boy said, removing his hand from the younger boy's shoulder and putting it back in his pocket. This time, before I could open my mouth, the younger boy spoke up. You failed us, he said, and the older boy put his hand back. Enough. The younger boy went back to looking upset. The older boy looked at me again. You did fail us, Theo, but we failed you too. We couldn't pull the plug, he said, his eyes firmly on mine. Now we need you. You have to pull the plug. Asterisk the plug. I shook my head. Please, you have the wrong person. I whispered, my skin crawling under the heat of the sun. Neither of the other boys looked bothered by it. The older boy shook his head. I'll make sure you find us, Theo. And this time when we meet, I'll tell you everything. The boy said, his voice sad. Soft. Because I can't do this anymore. It's too much, I need to get out. And I can't let them keep doing this to you, either. It's my fault, the older boy said, his voice breaking. My heart ached. I had no idea what he was talking about, but he seemed so hurt. So broken. Before I could speak, the older boy shook his head, as if he had already said too much, his dark hair becoming even messier than before. Time is almost up, Theo. But I'll come back tomorrow night. And the night after, he said, moving away from the younger boy, just as the sky started to darken. No, I didn't want him to come back. I wanted to help him, but I didn't know who Theo was. I wanted to be normal, left alone. But this was crazy. This was all in my mind. This was a dream. It wasn't real. Maybe if I repeated it enough times I would believe it. The older boy took a few steps towards me, crouching down towards where I was sitting. He was even more beautiful up close. I'll come back, I promise, he said, just as the younger boy started to grab at his chest again as the sky filled with gray, something rippling underneath his shirt. No wait, I said, watching as the older boy stood up again. Please, at least give me your name, I said, my voice desperate, just as the younger boy began to cry, his body shaking. The older boy turned to look at me. just as the creature from the younger boy's chest began to crawl its way out. The older boy looked at me for a moment before speaking. "My name is Avery," he said, before turning away again. "But you already knew that." I woke up, gasping for air. Sweat drenched my shirt, and my sheets were tangled around me. I woke up clutching my chest, my heart racing. I looked at the clock. 6:23 a.m. God, what had just happened? A lucid dream, obviously, but one that I also hadn't had since I was a kid. With the boys. The boys with a name now. Avery. 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 I took a deep, shaking breath. It was just a dream. A weird one, yes. But just a dream. Just a dream. I got up, taking a steaming shower, trying to wash what just happened off of me, before getting dressed, going through my routine robotically. Without thinking. Because all I could think about was the boy. Avery. Routine is nice. It's something you can follow, something you can count on. It's a constant, something dependable. Over the next few weeks, however, I had a new addition to my routine. At night, when I finally lay to sleep, I would wake up again. I would wake up in the field. The two boys, Avery, would be there. The same thing would happen, only slightly different each time. No matter what I did, Avery would only give me vague answers to my questions. He would always keep saying that it was his fault. That something was his fault. And something about the plug. Pulling it. Something about finding me, telling me everything. Every night. Without end. Lately, he kept saying something about finding me. Telling me everything. I hardly felt rested after these dreams. I wanted a break, but they never came. I asked my friends, sought out help, but they were never able to help. No one could help. It was a Saturday morning. I had woken up again, clutching my chest. Another dream with Avery. I was supposed to meet my friends to hang out. I was so tired, so emotionally drained between the dreams and school and trying to maintain a social life that I really didn't want to go, but these days I rarely got what I wanted. I got dressed, ready to go, when I got a text from Tyler. He told me to pick up coffee on my way over. God, he lived 2 minutes from the nearest Starbucks, and yet, here he was, asking me. No, not even asking. Telling me. He did this constantly, and I soon ran out of energy trying to fight it. It was better just to do it. I mentally groaned, but grabbed my wallet on the way out of the door. I got out of my apartment building, my heart jumping every time I saw a guy with dark brown hair pass by. The dreams with the boys, Avery, were making me paranoid. Paranoid that maybe they weren't just dreams. I started down the sidewalk, stuffing my hands into my pockets. The cool air and sun teased the hint of spring, but the leftover winter still remained. I tried to relax as I walked, and tried to take in my surroundings. The trees were finally starting to get their leaves back, shyly showing soft green ones. The air was cool, but it just seemed to make everything seem crisper, more defined. In focus. The light breeze tousled my hair, which I actually made an attempt with, in order to make another attempt to try and feel like my life was normal. Eventually, I made my way to the Starbucks closest to Tyler's house. I already knew everyone's drinks, we had been friends for 4 years. I knew all the go-tos, and the ones that were the backups if they were out of something. I pushed open the door, my shoulders instantly relaxing as the warmth from the shop, and the pulsing, lazy beat of the music gently thrummed in my ears. I ran a hand lightly through my hair, stepping to stand in line behind a few people. Eventually I made my way to the front, where I was greeted by an enthusiastic person behind the counter. "Hey," he started, smiling at me. His cheeriness caught me off guard, and I blinked for a moment, taking him in. Underneath his black apron I could see a soft, lavender sweater, to match with his soft purple hat, printed with BLM. I liked this guy already. He adjusted his glasses and looked at me. "How's it going?" he asked, catching me again by surprise. I warmed, feeling more at ease. "Gee, good. Thanks for asking, I said, glancing at his name tag. "Thanks, Loss," I said, shooting him a small smile. He nodded, beaming that I had called him by his name, adjusting his glasses again. I rattled off my usual list of orders for my friends and I, feeling more cheery than when I had been leaving the house. It was just the dreams. They weren't terribly awful, but they kept me up, thinking. Thinking about who Theo could be, about Avery could be. Because this couldn't be a coincidence. How he said he would appear in my dreams, and then for it to actually happen. The whole situation was just taking a toll on me. I was so confused. The whole situation was just disorienting. So thank God for the cheery Starbucks guy, for shining a brief bright spot in my day. I handed him my card, waiting until he handed it back to me before stowing it away, and stepping to the side so other customers could order. I had just stepped away when the guy looked up at me again. "Shoot, sorry, I forgot to get a name for this," he asked, and I opened my mouth to speak. Before I was cut off by a voice behind me. The voice was soft, but firm. Certain, but cautious. Nervous. "You can make it out to Theo." I froze in my tracks, not even noticing the confused look from the guy behind the counter before shrugging and putting it in. I was dreaming. This wasn't real. Oh God, this wasn't real. Someone pinch me, hit me, spill their drink on me. Something to tell me that this was just another dream. Please. Slowly, I turned around, my breath caught in my throat. My eyes washed over the sight in front of me. Messy dark hair, dark blue eyes, a somber, but gentle expressio.
Subscribe and please like. Thanks for tuning in and listening.
Was once a girl who dreamed of angels and demons and darling between. Lived in a castle of stone like a family. Dwelt in the courtyard and danced with all memories of love and enchantment. Golden the sun. When high in the sky, then she closed her eyes in the moment. There was one